Obviously the hubris, in this reporting that Trump is, I'm not concerned, witch hunt, it'll be fine. But I mean, this is obviously, we know from the two Pat subpoenas this week that this has reached into the Oval Office, and obviously there is reporting now Trump's attorneys are counseling him that he may be indicted. So what do you take from all of this, from the latest reporting?
Three really important data points, Steph. One, we saw the Rolling Stone reporting that Donald Trump's legal team is preparing for him to be indicted. And this is what I love. This is why Donald Trump's legal team is like the worst legal team imaginable.
Except for Alec Jones.
They are saying, that good point. They're saying, we are preparing a defense that will be putting it on, quote, the fall guys. What did we see a couple of days later in last night's CNN reporting? Donald Trump has been counseled to cut off all contact with and not talk to Mark Meadows. The only reasonable inference we can draw from that is Meadows is flipping, right? Maybe he has flipped, maybe he hasn't flipped. That's what you counsel somebody when it comes to, one of your buddies who is now cooperating with the feds. Do not talk to him anymore. And then the third data point is the Pat Cipollone subpoena to the grand jury. And Steph, all testimony is not created equal, because the J6 testimony that Pat Cipollone gave, we all saw it, some of it on videotape. He wouldn't answer the big questions. He wouldn't talk about what Donald Trump said or did. He wouldn't talk about Trump's crimes. He gets away with that in the January 6th committee because they don't have a way to compel him. They can't test that privilege once he asserts it. When we get witnesses in the grand jury, we can test that privilege. We can overcome it in real time, because when Pat Cipollone in the grand jury says executive privilege, I've done this 100 times, not with executive privilege, but with attorney-client privilege, Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, spousal privilege, doctor-patient privilege, etc. We walk over to Chief Judge Beryl Howell's chambers, the chief judge of the D.C. Federal District Court, who has supervisory authority over the grand jury, and we litigate it in real time, and she rules, I predict, Joe Biden hasn't invoked the privilege, so you lose, because Donald Trump doesn't get to invoke it, and there's a crime fraud exception, so belt and suspenders, you lose twice. Now, Pat Cipollone, go back in there and testify truthfully. And then, Steph, Cipollone has all the legal backing he needs, because a judge has ordered him to do it, and he's bulletproof, and he can testify about Trump's crimes, and I predict he will. The dam really is breaking.
Yeah. Well, I just because I'm just from contact with you, just from the physical contact I have with you in my studio, I just scream crime fraud exception to any news cycle. But that's the whole thing they're hinging it on, right? That's the whole discussion happening now, is executive privilege. And as you've said over and over and over again, you don't get to commit a crime and then say, you can't talk about it. That's executive privilege.
And we have precedent, because Richard Nixon, he asserted executive privilege, and he was the sitting president. He said, no, my tapes enjoy executive privilege. And the Supreme Court 9-0 said, no, you're a sitting president and you cannot assert it, right?
Yeah.
A former president certainly can't assert it. So we're on a really good track right now.
Yeah. So in other news, when I don't know where you end and I begin, I thought it was an original thought, and then I realized I read your tweet and I thought, I stole that from Glenn Kirschner. But it's not really stealing when you just organically... I thought it was my thought. I was like, oh, no, that's where I got that idea, is right. You tweeted. So agencies in which Trump installed lackeys, DHS, DOD, USSS, some installed after he lost the election, wiped their cell phones. Okay, and what other agencies? EPA, Education, Labor, Agriculture, HHS, or just the agencies that may have joined Trump's effort to retain power? That's a really good point, right?
And I'm waiting for some great investigative reporting on precisely that point. I'm hoping that the agencies that took no part in trying to keep Trump in power unlawfully also didn't wipe their cell phones, right? Because they didn't need to. It's the agencies. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
After he lost the election, he put in a new Secretary of Defense for 2 months, Chris Miller. So Chris Miller could do precisely what Chris Miller did, make sure the Capitol was set up for failure and then wiped his cell phone. Come on now.
Yeah.
What do we look like?
And speaking of this whole theme of lying, as that we're looking at in the Alex Jones trial, so Chris Miller goes on Fox News and lies that, Trump ordered, 10,000 National Guard troops. Under oath has to say, like Alex Jones had to say Sandy Hook was real. Like, no, he did not order,
And
National
Steph,
Guard
that
troops.
lie to the American people on Fox Entertainment, I don't call them Fox News, that is actually part of a criminal cover-up. That's chargeable as a crime. I'm appreciative that he told the truth under oath before the J6 committee, but when you lie to the American people trying to cover up Donald Trump's crimes, you're committing your own crime of accessory after the fact and misprision of a felony. So keep it up, sport. Keep it up.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because how many times have we heard, well, it's not a crime to lie on Fox News? It should be.
It can be a crime.
Okay.
It can be a crime. We just have to investigate it and indict it.
Yeah, and you said looks like a conspiracy for the ages. I served in the federal government under every president from Reagan to Trump. During that time, I served under 10 United States attorneys. I never recall wiping our cell phones when an administration turns over being a thing. Again, the key question keeps being, are we going to find all of these? And because, like you say, it is the biggest conspiracy in our history, it looks like,
I don't know. I am the last one to render an opinion on the capabilities of recovering deleted electronic data. I am incompetent, really bad.
Yeah.
That's why I have my whiteboard and my legal pads. That's what I do.
And I've heard your thoughts on autocorrect. You have not been able to
here's
conquer
the thing,
autocorrect.
The way to investigate these deleted texts is to subpoena every mofo that wiped their cell phone and ask them two lines of questions. One, why did you do it? Who directed it? Et cetera. And then the other is, we want to know who you spoke with and what you said to them on and around January 6th. Think about this. We now know that the federal prosecutors have had Mark Meadows' cell phone records back in April. We didn't know that So what you do is you sit there with Mark Meadows' cell phone records and you see how many times, for example, Chad Wolf, the illegally installed head of DHS, communicated with Meadows on and around January 6th. You've got the hard records, and you put him under oath. You say, I see that noon on Insurrection Day, you communicated with Meadows. What did you say? So one way or another, you can get at this stuff.
Okay. All right. Got it. Now, so by the way, after Guy Reffitt was sentenced to 7.5 years and his daughter called for life in prison for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And you just said, as you keep repeating, this highlights the deep injustice that we as a nation are experiencing at this moment in time. The boots of the insurrection are being punished, while the suits of the insurrection, golf, hold rallies, fundraisers, and dinner parties, it's not right. Obviously, what we've learned this week gives you more confidence that we are going to get the suits, yeah?
Yeah, but justice has been delayed. I'm hoping it won't be denied, and I don't think it will be. But when the boots of the insurrection, the people Donald Trump told to attack the Capitol and stop the certification, are being prosecuted, convicted, some imprisoned, and yet the command structure of the insurrection, the political insurrectionists, the privileged insurrectionists, the wealthy insurrectionists are out holding rallies, fundraisers, and dinner parties. That's a deep injustice going on at this moment in our nation. The boots need to be held accountable, but even more importantly, the suits need to be held accountable because they're out there recruiting the next batch of boots. So let's get off the dime, DOJ.
Yeah.